Hello, this is Nick Adderley.
He is, or rather he was, a chief constable until he was sacked a year ago today. You may recognise him from such pantomime works of fiction as I served in the Royal Navy for 10 years as a commander. I didn't. And I negotiated the ceasefire in the Haiti civil uprising. But of course, there's the Booker Prize nominated I went through Developed Vetting. Developed Vetting, let's talk about that last one. Developed vetting is the kind of invasive background checks that makes MI5 look like the PTA. Developed vetting, or DV for short, is when you're going to be granted access to top secret information. So the Home Office want to look into your background. They ask about your friends, your family, your finances, your exes, your childhood hobbies, your browser history, your favourite flavour of ice cream, your time pretending to be a fake Navy officer, that sort of thing. A year ago today, on the 21st of June, Nick Adderley was sacked from his job as Chief Constable of Northants Police for lying on job application forms, media interviews, books he contributed to, online biographies, and just about anywhere where people would listen to him. Now, that's not to say he didn't deserve that. He thoroughly deserved to be sacked for lying, but that was a very convenient PR firework. A loud noise to deflect attention away from the real story. Because while the media focused on the medals and him claiming that he was a negotiator in Haiti, no one ever stopped to ask, how did this man reach the very top job and actually pass all of this developed vetting without anyone ever spotting anything? And that's what the real story here is. But that's why I'm here, not to laugh at the lies, but to expose the system that let them to go unchecked, and to examine the reasons why behind that. Because trust me, there is a far bigger scandal about to explode about the protection of Nick Adderley and all of his cohorts. In August 2024, after Adderley was sacked, newly elected Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner Danielle Stone, only elected into post in May 2024, just weeks previously, published a review into how this could have happened. The PR stunt of this review was designed to make it look like with Adderley and Mould gone, the new regime under Stone would usher in an era of transparency. Hurrah for transparency. The Office of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner in Northants made some pretty bold claims that Nick Adderley had gone through successful developed vetting, because frankly, they had to. If they admitted they'd never seen proof of his vetting, or worse still, never even checked themselves, it means they appointed a chief constable to the highest police job running the force without even performing the most basic of checks. And isn't that the whole point of why we have elected police, fire and crime commissioners, costing us as taxpayers hundreds of thousands of pounds a year for both their appointment and all of their staff that goes with it, so we have some oversight? Instead, they leaned on the claim that they'd seen confirmation sent from Staffordshire Police that he'd passed developed vetting, a claim that they never bothered to check, wasn't underpinned by a management vetting certificate, and there's no record of it in the National DV database. In other words, they just took a letter at face value, and that was that. What that means is they didn't do their job, and they're now scrambling to retroactively justify it and contain the fallout to just being Nick Adderley being a liar, rather than them that helped facilitate and enable that. This isn't confirmation, this is a cover-up. In October 2023, after Nick Adderley had been suspended, but before his misconduct hearing, an FOI request was made by a user named William James Crow. His questions were quite simple and straightforward, asking questions about Nick Adderley's vetting background, with the most crucial one, number 7, is what status is CC Adderley's security clearance? Northants Office of Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner responded with what can only be described as a high-performance dodge. If you actually start to read through and dissect all of their responses, when they're asked, when was the last time CC Nick Adderley was vetted by your office or Northants Police, they evade actually answering and just say as part of his recruitment process, Staffordshire Police were contacted and they confirmed on the 3rd of August that he was vetted. And this covered him from 2017 to the 23rd of February 2024. The response in the FOI was deliberately vague, not saying they had a copy of his DV certificate, just that they had seen proof. What they actually had was just a letter from Staffordshire Police, addressed to Nick Adderley himself, saying that he had passed vetting. Then at question 4, when asked if following his retirement and rehiring, was he subject to any new vetting as part of his new contract, you get a very evasive response stating that everything they did was in line with the College of Police Authorised Professional Practice Guide. Don't actually give you an answer of yes or no. That in itself screams cover-up. And then finally, when asked what the status of Nick Adderley's security clearance is, all they respond with is dancing around the question, stating developed vetting is required for individuals who reach his post. And they talk about what the requirements for developed vetting are. They do not actually confirm and lie at any point saying he has got developed vetting status, because they know if they do, they're going to need to back that up. Jumping back to the review that Northants Police and Northants Police Fire and Crime Commissioner published in August of 2024, they make a specific reference to seeing the DV certificate. I'll state that word again, certificate, where they state the DV certificate showed DV clearance from 23rd of February 2017 to 23rd of February 2024. Vetting was cleared on this basis. In September 2024, I did my own FOI asking what evidence was seen by the Office of Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner that Adderley was ever subjected to developed vetting. This request was repeatedly frustrated and evaded. They paraphrased the question and kept saying in response, the Office of Northamptonshire Police and Crime Commissioner were presented with evidence the former Chief Constable had DV clearance. Not an answer, not at all. Rather than be transparent, they just carried on evading matters, so this was escalated and ultimately ignored by the Office of Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner until February 2025, when the ICO ordered them to respond. Keep that thought alive, because it took them being told to comply with the law after nearly 6 months before they did. And if you read this letter, the comments they make about me, saying that I make wild accusations and I accuse them of lying. I'm not accusing you of lying, because we'll go on to prove I exposed you lied. There's quite a big difference between those two. I submitted a new FOI on whatdotheyknow.com because the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner had started replying over private emails rather than responding online. Again, we can only assume to avoid public scrutiny. The email from their Governance and Accountability Manager on the 26th of February 2025 is damning. He finally admitted and provided the evidence I had been requesting for 6 months, and others like William Crowe had been requesting for nearly 2 years. His statement that's on my very public FOI states, the Office of Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner saw written confirmation that Mr. Adderley held developed vetting clearance at the time of his transfer to Northamptonshire. In the spirit of transparency, this was in the form of a letter from Staffordshire Police Vetting Department confirming Mr. Adderley had passed developed vetting in 2017. No certificate, just a letter. And that means that the review that is online that says that they saw a certificate is utter hogwash. Misfeasance in public office isn't just wrong, it's a criminal offence, and it carries potential maximum of life imprisonment. So when a public body, staffed by people paid for from the public purse, lie and say that they saw a developed vetting certificate that never existed, and only when pressed do they admit, actually, it was just a letter, that's not an idle mix-up, that's jail-worthy dishonesty there. And when you factor all of this happened in the middle of a misconduct hearing to determine if Nick Adderley should be sacked and face criminal charges, that's not just misfeasance in public office. There's potentially perverting the course of justice here to help Adderley avoid any kind of charging. You might ask what difference it makes if they saw a certificate or a letter. Well, remember the part of the review where it said the National Security Vetting Service had no record of Nick Adderley's vetting certificate? What's that? The National Security Vetting Service had no record of Nick Adderley's DV vetting. That's very odd, isn't it? Yes, because DV has receipts. Literally. Someone has to pay thousands for it. Someone has to request it. Most importantly, someone has to carry it out and file it and issue a certificate. That's not optional. It's recorded. It should therefore come as no surprise that the old adage, follow the money, meant my FOI to Staffordshire in 2024 shows there is no financial record of this ever being paid by them. In policing, public money is audited down to the last biro, but somehow several £1,000s spent on this vetting clearance, that definitely happened, had left no financial trace, with the requesting organisation and the vetting organisation also holding no records of this either. That is not just suspicious, that's impossible. So with all that in mind, that raises the very valid question, was Nick Adderley ever actually subjected to any form of developed vetting? No, absolutely not. He was not subject to any developed vetting, because he was, there'd be proof of it. The new broom was voted into office in May 2024 under a ticket of rooting out corruption and sweeping away all the rotten apples. However, the first big action that was taken, either through relying on information told to her that was inaccurate or simply being part of it, was to lie to the public, claiming documents existed that didn't in order to protect the reputation of the department that is designed to be there for oversight that failed. Yeah, not a great first look, but hurrah for transparency. If Nick Adderley was sacked for lying to get his job, then surely all of those who lied to help facilitate this and then worked very hard to lie some more to cover up their own failings should also be in line for redundancy. This isn't just one or two people misfiling a document or calling something by the wrong name. This is a deliberate attempt to mislead people into believing something existed that didn't. And it's a deliberate attempt to cover things up and contain the fallout to just Nick Adderley. Because what you need to ask is, if there is nothing to hide here, why are they trying so hard to hide it? It's almost as if Adderley's appointment was deliberate, and all of those people that worked very hard to put him in place are part of a group of like-minded people that acted in such a way to put him into power where he could be used. If the CPS were ever brave enough to charge Adderley, it would mean all of this information, all of these documents would have to be exposed and laid out in court for public consumption. And Adderley himself, do you think he'd go down quietly? Of course not. He'd sling mud, he'd name names, he would drag everyone down with him who was involved in helping him get to where he is. And that, my friends, would open up a Pandora's box of secrets that lowly peasants like us are not supposed to know nor ask questions about. You'd think with people's jobs on the line and all of these things that I'm exposing, showing that the new regime is just as bad as the old one, that there'd be some big push by the police to try and silence me, or at the very least discredit me, so that people don't pay attention to everything that I'm saying. They pay attention to whatever the discredit and the smear is. But luckily I can say I've had no problems with the police whatsoever, no trouble at home. Every crime that I've reported to the police, such as rape, assault, they log it promptly, they deal with it correctly. And anytime I've dealt with them, they've been polite, they've been professional. So no issues with them whatsoever. I'm assuming that everything I'll post in here, because it's backed up by facts, they will do what they've done previously and agree, yes, he's brought up some valid facts, we'll agree with that and support him. So yeah, a little bit of a shock there. I was expecting more blowback from the police, but luckily they've been really friendly with me. Join me next week where we ask the question that if Nick Adderley was never actually correctly vetted, then just what secrets were buried with him in that missing background check? Who stood to lose if the truth came out? And why is the establishment bent over backwards to keep the lid on this sealed? Because let me tell you, when vetting fails, it's not just incompetence, it's a smokescreen for something far more dangerous. Join me next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that bollocks, because that really does help the channel out.